So we can now thread the nice new braided hose around exactly as the other one was. So that is from each caliper through these two clips round through to the master cylinder. We'll leave the bottoms undone for now and get one of our nice new banjo bolts with two copper washers. Because this is the OEM set, all of the banjo bolts are the same size, but if you go for the double race line, you'll get a longer one at the top to go through the two lines, like a double length one. So a 14mm head, one washer goes up against the bolt head. You've then got the banjo bolt in the middle, and then the other one goes between this and the fastening. So the master cylinder, we want to connect this hose up to it. So just make sure that you've threaded it how you want it to, don't have it twisted and stuff, so just sort of hold it there and then make sure that it will turn nicely without catching on anything. So despite the warning I gave, I've just noticed that I've actually routed this brake hose wrong. When I first offered it up, these bits were going in the wrong direction, which wasn't very good, and I threaded it behind the fork. But you can see here it's twisted. I'm sure it'd probably be fine. It's twisted a bit more than it should be. If you look at the OEM layout, it actually comes in front of the fork. No choice but to just take it off and try to do it again. So it'll probably introduce a little bit of air in. Luckily I haven't fully bled it yet, so it might make things take a little bit longer. That looks a bit nicer now. So you need to put one of your copper washers right up against the bolt head. It then goes through the banjo bolt. You then put the other washer on top, so they're sandwiched between two copper washers, and then you screw it into the master cylinder. So my torque wrench is going to be set to 25 Newton meters, as that's what the manual calls for. So double check your manual and do whatever is needed. So now, just before I connect up the bottom banjo bolt, what I'm going to do is just fill these lines with brake fluid. That'll save me trying to pump it all the way through and gravity feed all the way through the bleed nipples when it's got nothing in it. So what I'll do is tie a bag on the end. I'm not expecting a huge amount to come out. There you go, so both ends are now covered. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just put some of my new fluid into the reservoir. Already a much nicer colour than the older stuff. And what I'm going to do is just going to gently pump the lever, and hopefully this is going to just start to fill the lines. See, so once that gets started, it continued to drip through. It's quite slow to kick off, and then gravity just feeds it straight through. So if you raise that one up, if it's only coming through one, and that will then make it come through the other one. So that means the hoses are now full, so we can attach them onto the calipers. Okay, so down here at the bottom, it's the same job except a little bit more messy. The copper sandwich again, and this is the point where you find out whether your offering up and alignment is correct, because if this is the wrong way around, it's not going to fit properly, so we're going to twist copper on it. And torque it up. Okay, now I'm going to do the other side. You can see it's still siphoning itself out. So with both banjo bolts connected and torqued up, we just need to bleed the brakes in the usual way. So you take the rubber cap off, get the ring spanner, 8mm ring, Put that over that, and then attach a length of hose onto the bleed nipple. Put that into a jar or whatever you want. Okay, so what you now need to do, pump the brake a few times to get a little bit of pressure up. Till the caliper gets full of liquid, it's not going to do a great deal, but pump it up, undo the spanner, let a little bit come out, do the spanner up, and then let the brake off, and then repeat as many times as you need until no air bubbles left and it's a nice solid feel to it. So let's do that. So because this was an empty system, it's going to take significantly longer than usual. So have patience with it and just work the fluid through and the air out. So remember, as long as there's air coming out, that means there's still bleeding work to do. And keep an eye on the reservoir at the top. You'll probably go through 2 or 3 of those. So keep that topped up, otherwise you'll end up drawing air into it and you'll have to push it all the way through again. So because of the T-split, I'm going to go to the other side, do a little bit on there just to fill that caliper up, just in case it's drawing air through from the other branch, and then come back and finish bleeding this one. Okay, it's starting to come through a bit better on this side now. Further side tends to be a little bit easier to bleed. I'm not exactly sure why that is. But yeah, it's coming through nicely now. Quite a few air bubbles, so that's probably where we changed it over when I made that mistake. So I'll carry on. Lever's starting to get a little bit firmer, which is good. So the left hand side was running quite clear now. Pop that reservoir up. So the brake lever is holding quite firm. It's very floppy earlier on, but now after a few pumps it is just getting some pressure in. So with that bled nicely, we're going to do up the bleed nipples to the specified torque setting. In my case it's 6 Newton meters. Need an adapter. So dust cover back on, and there's quite a bit of brake fluid about, so get your brake cleaner out, clean off the discs. So once everything's cleaned up, you're happy that the fasteners we've talked about are tight, except for the caliper fixing bolts, which we'll talk about in a minute. So they're all ready. You've bled through the system, you've topped up the reservoir, and you can then put in whatever that's called into the top here and screw that back in. We'll go and find the metal fastener in a minute just to attach that, and then hopefully that's held all the brake fluid off your paintwork. Where did it go? Find the screw. You'll recall that we didn't tighten the caliper retaining bolts, and the reason for that is we want to make sure that they're nicely centered onto the disc. So the way you do that, give it a few pumps, make sure it's holding firm, so there you can feel it's moving just a little bit. Grab the brake and then you can feel it's not moving at all, and at that point just want to tighten those up, and then of course you're going to torque them to the right setting. So in my case that's 35 Newton meters. Double check the manual. Okay, so the brakes are feeling pretty good, pretty firm until I actually go out and do a test ride. I can't be 100% sure. So that's all there is to it. We've done quite a lot today. We've changed all of the hoses for uprated braided hoses, completely stripped down the calipers, put in new seals and new pistons, and then filled it all up. Because I've upgraded the oil brake line and the pistons, and I've changed the seals and give it a general clean out, I'm hoping there's going to be a good improvement. And it might be a little bit hard to pinpoint exactly which piece has made the most improvement, but even so, these are the brakes. The more improvements I can get, the better. This bike needs to go through an MOT before I can actually test ride it, so I'm going to be booking that in next week. I'll take it for a test ride. I will report back how much improvement or not I notice from this bit of work. But I hope the tutorials helped out anyway for this bike or some similar types.